Hi everybody, it's Laura from Green Tree, and today we're talking about pomegranates. Most of you guys have probably seen one of these before, although maybe you're more familiar with it in the form of juice. But we're going to go with the whole ones today. These are in season from approximately September until most of the way through May actually, but it goes from the northern to southern hemispheres, and the different areas have them ready at different times, which is why the season is so long. A lot of us are used to these being kind of a Christmas fruit or something that people get around the holidays, and that's just because of the way that the weather is here, and that season starting in September is when we're usually going to see these in our markets. So the first thing I'm going to address is how you turn this into these. So these are pomegranate arils. The little bits that come from the inside that are juicy and delicious are called arils when you separate them out. That's A-R-I-L-S. Pomegranates are technically a berry, just like a watermelon is technically a berry, even though they're really different, and all of the little parts have fun names. But there's a lot of ways to cut up a pomegranate, and this one is my favorite. I think it's the easiest. No matter how you're going to do it, you want to take the pomegranate and roll it on a hard surface, like a table or a cutting board, and you'll hear kind of almost like a little crackling noise happening inside, and that is the pith and the flesh starting to separate a little bit from the arils. That's going to loosen things up and make it a slightly easier task for you. Then I'm going to cut it across the center, not up and down through the little, I actually don't know the name for this, the little belly button thing. Don't cut it through the middle of that. You want to cut it around the circumference of the pomegranate. Just enough that you're going through the skin. You don't want to get in there and start breaking open the little arils. Once you've done that, I just stick 2 fingers into that little crack and pull them apart, and the whole thing will pop into 2 pieces fairly quickly. You can go through the business of scoring it all down the sides this way, but it takes a lot longer and you end up with a similar kind of product at the end. So once around the center, pop it open with 2 fingers. Once you've got that, there's 2 different kinds of methods. You can take and hold the half in your hand and kind of hit it with a wooden spoon, and the pieces will come flying out into the bowl, and you'll end up with something like this. Or you can go ahead, and this is kind of my preferred method, pop the half underwater and just sort of pop it inside out and push on the arils with your finger. They'll come out into the water, and all of the white pith that's on the inside will float to the top, and then you can just go ahead and pour that right off, and then you'll have your fabulous bowl of these little delicious arils. So once you have pulled these out of the pomegranate, what are you going to do with them? Pomegranates are originally native to the Middle East and parts of northern India, and so you see them in a lot of Middle Eastern and Indian dishes. They're also grown now in Africa, Asia, and even Arizona and California, so there are some US grown pomegranates now, but they're going to mostly show up in Mediterranean, Middle Eastern, and Indian dishes. Of course, you can turn them into juice like I showed you before. These little guys each have a tiny seed inside, which I like. You can just crunch them right up and eat that. That's where all the dietary fiber is. They are a good source of vitamin C, vitamin K, and B9, also known as folate, and a really great source of fiber, unless you take that little seed out. If you want to turn these into this, probably the easiest method is to take them, pour them into a Ziploc bag. I would suggest like a freezer bag so it's a little more heavy duty, and roll a rolling pin right over the top of the whole thing. It'll pop these like that, and you'll have a bag full of juice. You can just pour it through a strainer, or if you're really careful, pour it directly into a glass, and there's your juice. You can also dry these, the whole thing, until it's kind of the consistency of, well, any other dried fruit really. Dry to the touch, but a little bit flexy, and then grind them, and that's actually often used as a seasoning in chutneys and fruit salsas or other types of dishes. Somebody just asked in the comments, do they bake well in muffins? The answer is you could use the dried ones in muffins, but I would not suggest using the fresh ones in muffins because depending on your heat and temperature, they can break down pretty fast, and then you just end up with juice in your batter, and you're going to end up with kind of moist areas where the pomegranates are. So if you want to dry them first, you could definitely use them in that type of baking, but I wouldn't use them fresh. So anyway, you can use the dried ground ones as a spice. You can sprinkle these over the top of a salad the same way you would use like little mandarin orange slices or some other type of fruit. You can put them on top of roasted meats. That's actually a really good combination. I would recommend them as a little appetizer. You can take these and sprinkle them over the top of basically like a bruschetta, but I would take your little bread or cracker, spread some cream cheese on that, and then if you want to really get fancy, maybe some onion jam or bacon jam, and then sprinkle the pomegranates over the top. Those are some of the really tasty, fun, attractive ways to use them. Let's see. Oh, and then I want to give you a quick recipe for pomegranate molasses. So this is regular molasses. You've probably seen this before. It's hard to tell through the bottle, but it's a really thick brown sort of sweetener. This has nothing to do with pomegranate molasses. It's kind of a common misconception. It's not flavored molasses. Molasses is actually made from sugar cane, and pomegranate molasses is just made from pomegranates. Now, if you want your pomegranate molasses to not be as tangy, you can add sugar. And that's the basic recipe that I'm going to give you. You want to take about 2 cups of pomegranate juice. I'm sorry, 4 cups of pomegranate juice. You can either get this kind that's already made, or you can take and juice the little arils out of a fresh pomegranate. Once you've got 4 cups of pomegranate juice, you want to combine that in a saucepan with about 1/2 cup of sugar if you want this to be a relatively sweet molasses, and just skip the sugar if you want it to be really, really tart. And then you want to add a tablespoon of lemon juice. Cook the liquid without the seeds in it for a couple of minutes on medium until the sugar is dissolved, stirring the whole time. And then turn it down until it's just simmering. That's probably going to be medium-low heat, and it's going to take somewhere between 1 to 2 hours, most likely in the 70 to 90 minute range. And you're going to cook that down until that 4 cups of liquid becomes about a cup of finished molasses. It's going to look really intense and syrupy as it's bubbling towards the end. Then you want to cool that in a dish to the side, put it in a glass container, and you can keep that in the fridge for months, so long as you never dip any dirty utensils in it. You can use that on top of desserts. You can use that to flavor sauces for things like roasted beef or lamb or even chicken dishes. Or you can actually use it to flavor a cocktail, which is so good. Takes a little bit of time, but definitely worth it. Oh, apparently we got best wishes from Turkey. Thank you. I think it's Unal. I appreciate the shout out. I imagine you guys actually probably are a lot closer to pomegranate growing territory than we are here in Michigan. So there you go. Those are my pomegranate tips. You can use them in just about anything. Savory dishes like grain salads, rice dishes, roasted meats, or sweet, delightful desserts sprinkled on top of ice cream or layered with chocolate in a little parfait. Let me know if you decide to try out the molasses recipe. I hope you guys enjoyed this little pomegranate tutorial, and you get to experiment with some new fruits this season. Have a fabulous Tuesday. Bye.